young men who went terrible ways, sadly. They became alcoholics and drug addicts. Two of my uncles didn't live very long. I remember them just vaguely as I was growing up. But they got into drugs and alcohol, and they both lost their lives. One was high, and he was at his girlfriend's house, and he began to abuse her son. Not his son, but her son, while he was at her house. And she pulled out a gun and shot him and blew him away. That's the one uncle. That same uncle had spent about 15 years in prison. I remember going to visit him at Christmas time. He had spent about 15 years in prison for another crime. And then he gets out, he gets into trouble, and he's dead and he's gone. My other uncle began drinking at the age of 14. And to this day, he continues to be an alcoholic. We're all amazed at how long, his longevity, how long he's been able to live. Because he's been an alcoholic since the age of 14. And so, my mom was terrified that I would get into drugs and alcohol. Because I grew up around it. I grew up seeing my uncles drunk. I grew up seeing them roll joints in the backyard. I remember that very clearly. But my mom was very clear with her uncles. If you ever, that's how my mom was. If you ever, and so I was sort of, kind of protected. But I remember seeing all of this happen. So in an effort to keep me off of drugs and alcohol, my mom did something very interesting. This uncle who's the alcoholic went into rehab. And it was one of his many times he went to rehab. So he goes to rehab, he's in the rehab hospital, and the family goes to visit, and I get to tag along. I'm probably 10 years old. 10 years old, right? So I go in there, and I knew him. He was like my favorite uncle, really. When he was drunk, he was really, really a nice drunk. He would give me money and all kinds of stuff. Favorite uncle, man. So we go in there, and I see him, like, what's up? And then the visit is over, and it's time to go. Everybody leaves but me. Mom says, no, you're staying the night. What? What do you mean I'm staying the night? I'm 10 years old. You can't leave me, I got to go home. No, I want you to stay with your uncle. Stay with your uncle. No. Sure enough, here I am at a rehab hospital with my uncle in the bed. First night in rehab, he hasn't hit the the detox phase yet, but it's coming, and I'm here. There's one of those just little, really, really uncomfortable hospital chairs right there. That's where I get to spend the night. Way to go, Mom, right? So here we go, and it gets later, and things get stranger as the evening progresses. And I begin to see my uncle change from this guy who's kind of fun and, gave me money and stuff, to this guy who went just kind of crazy. Right? And through the night, he would go from fits of rage and fear and all kinds of stuff to where he would get violent with the nurses, and finally they restrained him. They strapped him to the bed. I'm sitting there watching, my eyes are like huge, And then he would begin to hallucinate. And he saw big spiders going across the wall. And he would just cry and just go into these crazy hallucinations. Then he'd begin to get happy, and he'd laugh, he'd make jokes about other family members. That was actually quite interesting. I enjoyed that. Right? And he did just all kinds of things. And I remember, I'll never forget, when he begged me to come undo his restraints. Oh, come on, dude. That is rough. And it was the craziest night I'd ever experienced. Now, you gotta understand something. You gotta understand. To this day, I have never had a sip of alcohol in my life. Never. All because I sat there that night watching my uncle and the effects of alcohol on him. Whatever my mom had in mind, it worked. It worked, dude. It worked. But here's the thing. It was just a year earlier, and oddly enough, at my grandmother's house, who had raised these boys, remember that, at my grandmother's house. I was one of those kids, I don't know if you were one of these kids. I was one of those kids that liked to explore the house and go looking for treasures. And maybe you were that way too. And it didn't matter whose house it was. I'd go to anybody's house. look for stuff, all right? Look for stuff that you can claim as your own. So I'm at my grandparents' house, and I'm doing my thing, I'm looking around, I open a closet, boom, and in the bottom of the closet, there's a box. I'm like, there's lots of treasures in a box for a 10-year-old, for a 9-year-old, right? So up there, I begin to dig through this box, and lo and behold, there's these ripped up pages of a magazine, kind of glossy, eye-catching, flesh color on the magazine. So I pull out the pieces of this magazine that had been balled up, and I begin to unfold, and boom, there's porn. For the first time ever, I'm seeing something that is rather interesting to a 9-year-old kid. Something that was different, something unique, never seen this before. This is a different kind of treasure, not used to this, right? And I began to pull out more pieces of the magazine, and I had no idea how long it was. I mean, it was probably 10, 15 minutes. I'm just going to go, wow, ooh, look at this. Complete and utter sort of curiosity. And that was my first exposure to pornography, something that would become extremely powerful, a seed that in fact was planted that would begin to impact my life later on. My mother had managed to do a bit of a unique job of helping me come to understand the dangers of alcohol. But there's so many challenges and so many dangers that exist. And here was one that slipped in a rather subtle way. And it was porn. And right then and right there in those moments, something just sort of happened. And that was the beginning of a kind of a crazy journey. It was the first exposure. And then there was another exposure in my own house. I'll never forget that. I go into the bathroom, and there on the back of the toilet, that little thing that covers the back part of the toilet, there sits a Playboy magazine. Wow. Where did that come from? Just out there. And the crazy thing is, as I think about pornography and the pervasiveness of pornography in this country, many of us have a similar story. Many of us have a similar story. I don't know where you were, I don't know what you were doing, but you recall at some level when you were first exposed to pornography. It's almost like an American passage, you know? You're in the backyard. I've heard this story from lots and lots of guys. You're in the backyard. You're going to build a fort in the backyard because forts are cool and having a great time. You kick over a rock and boom, underneath the rock there's a stack of pornographic magazines. Where did that come from? Come on. It's not like you have to find porn. It's like porn finds you. Yeah, come on. And then there's now in this day and age, okay, I'm dating myself because I'm talking about magazines and stuff. Okay, all right, now we have, if you have a cell phone, you got porn in the pocket. So accidental exposures or first-time exposures are happening even earlier than when I was a kid at 9 years old. Now they're suggesting that it could happen as early as 6 years old. Crazy. It's very pervasive. And it begins to shape our thinking, it begins to shape our minds, it begins to shape our souls and our hearts about how to relate to other people and how to relate to our God. So this was all new to me. And here I am, I'm 9 years old when it happens, but then as I progress through the ages, guess what happens? Guess what happens? That stuff begins to become all the more curious for all of us, right? Because you begin to hit an age where, I began to hit that age, where girls no longer have cooties, and I actually want to look at them, right? And it's particularly intriguing to think about looking at them without any clothes on. And so here I am hitting that puberty age, and the curiosity is going wild, and one thing is missing. I have not had that talk with my parents. No one is informing me at all about this journey that I'm on that is becoming quite awkward and quite interesting to me as a young guy. There's no one speaking into my life. All right, so interesting thing. About the same time, I didn't grow up Adventist, but in my teen years I became an Adventist. So about the same time that I'm beginning to sort of be awakened to the reality of sexuality, and in a negative way I've been exposed to pornography, I go to a Seventh-day Adventist church school. Because again, my mother's like, dude, I don't want you, you could go bad. I don't want you to go bad. I'm going to stick you in this little private school down the road called Little Rock Junior Academy. Turns out that Little Rock Junior Academy was a Seventh-day Adventist church school. So I walk into this Little Rock Seventh-day Adventist church school on the first day with a sausage and egg McMuffin. Because I had no idea you people didn't eat pork, all right? And I didn't care at the time. And I go to this little school, little private school. I think we had a total of like 45 kids in this school. But I fell in love with the people at that school, and that became the place where you guys began to teach me about Jesus. And you begin to tell me, dude, you guys start going to church on Saturday. I'm like, cartoons are on Saturday. And college football's on Saturday. I ain't going to your church on Saturday. And what I do, I end up going to church on Saturday. Funniest thing is, these little Adventist kids, I still wasn't baptized, I wasn't in there, I was just kind of curious, checking it out, all right? So I would go home Saturdays after church, I'd turn on TV and watch football, and I was the most popular kid in school, because they'd all call me and say, what's the score? Faithful Adventist kids, that's right. So that was, so here I am though, the cool thing about it is that it was a great community, it was a great opportunity. Eventually, you guys showed Jesus to me. And I bought into the message and I was baptized. And I became a Seventh-day Adventist Christian. And at the same time though, I'm struggling as I'm coming of age and becoming a teenager and trying to figure out this sex thing. But I love Jesus and I want to know Jesus and I want to do all the things that a good solid Christian guy can do. But I'm struggling with this lust thing and I don't know what to do. And it was about that time that I got up enough courage, because I'm just sort of conflicted inside. I got up enough courage to go to the pastor. I knew this guy was a pastor. I was like, dude, he can help me. And I prayed about it and do all that sort of thing, but I really wanted him to know. So I actually got up enough courage, and I pulled the pastor aside, and I said, look. I think you guys had said something in church or something about lust. And I was like, yeah, that's me. I lust, yeah. So I pulled him aside and I said, look. I got a problem with lust. When nobody's looking, I look at these things. When no one's around, I look at cable. I look at Showtime and Skinamax. That's what I do, all right? I struggle here, pastor. He just kind of looked at me. He said, okay, I'll pray for you. And he prayed for me. And I still left that meeting struggling and a mess. And with the realization that this is going to be a real battle and I need something else. And I wasn't even sure what it was. But I knew in the context of where I was, I knew where I was within the church that this wasn't the type of thing that you really spend a lot of time talking about. And so I just sort of figured out, okay, I'm going to try to do my best to sort of just get through this and move on. Well, as you know, you grow up and there's more exposure. So all through those teen and adolescent years, I'm sort of wrestling. I had cable back in those days, and I'll never forget, we had cable at my grandma's house. I don't know what to deal with. But I had cable at my grandma's house, and you always have that cousin that like works on things and tinkers with things. Y'all got a cousin like that? Yeah, you always have a cousin that thinks he's a mechanic or an engineer, and y'all ends up breaking stuff all the time. Right. So I had one of those cousins, and he figured out how to fix the cable box so we could get the Playboy channel. So sure enough, here we are, and here I am as a teenager, and at my grandma's house, I got the Playboy channel. I spent a lot of time at grandma's house, all right? That's where I hung out. And so it began this new desperate journey for me, where it was beginning to shape kind of how I thought about life and how I moved about. But it was also this type of thing that I had to keep as a secret. I didn't want anybody to know. And as a Christian young guy, hitting my teens and heading into early adulthood, it became this source of shame and struggle and guilt. And there was never a devotional that I had, because I learned, you Adventists taught me, man, you got to spend time with Jesus, you got to read your devotional. Well, I would do that, and I would read my devotional, and I'd pray to God. And then the focus of my prayers in general had to do with God, help me to break this habit that I've developed. You guys all know